thought it would be fun to paint something for March. So I'm choosing a 4-leaf clover, and I think we'll add a little rainbow coming behind it. I think that would be fun. So materials for today: paints, something to mix colors in. I use these little paint palettes a lot, but mine are all still full with other colors that I don't want to wash out quite yet. So paints, a palette, kind of a medium-sized brush, like a 6. If you have a small brush, this is a size 2, and I really like this brush, but it's not necessary today. Some water. Maybe your water will be cleaner than mine. I have a sponge to dry my brush off with, an eraser just in case, a pencil, and a piece of watercolor paper. Also, something that might be handy is a piece of scratch paper you could test your colors out on. This is mine from a few days ago. And I think that's it. So if you've seen a clover before, or a 4-leaf clover, you might have noticed that the petals are kind of shaped like little hearts. So that's how we're gonna start. I want to make my clover in the bottom half of my paper so that I can paint a rainbow above it. And I'm gonna paint mine off to the left-hand side because I'm kind of imagining the rainbow heading off towards the right-hand side. So I'm gonna start by drawing a heart. And I'm gonna draw pretty lightly with this pencil because I don't really want my pencil lines to show. But I'll draw hard enough, firmly enough that you can see these lines. Now at the top of the heart where it comes down, I'm gonna draw a really gentle curved line heading down to the point. It's almost like I'm cutting this heart in half. And now I'm going to turn my paper sideways and draw another heart. And if I can, I'm gonna try and make this heart overlap that first one a little bit. Like that. And I'll do another line to cut that in half. This is just for us to keep track of a side that's, when we paint, we're gonna make one side a little bit darker than the other so that it looks realistic. Now I'm turning my paper again. I'm gonna do another heart. These hearts are all a little bit different. In nature, these petals would not be shaped exactly the same. So they don't even need to look like the type of heart you would draw for Valentine's Day or for a craft. See how this heart's bigger than this one? And that's fine. Now I'm gonna turn it all the way back to where I started. I have 3, and I want this to be a 4-leaf clover so that it is good luck. So now I need to decide where I want the stem to be, and before I draw my last petal. And I think I want the stem to come down kind of like this. So that leaves room right here for my last heart. It's easier for me to turn the paper to draw these hearts. So I'm gonna do that. I'm letting them overlap a little, and I'm cutting it in half. Okay. Push pause if you are not at this point. Push pause until you get all your petals drawn and cut in half. And then when you're ready to move forward, find an eraser, either the top of your paper, a pencil, or a pink eraser. And I'm gonna carefully erase where these petals overlap. It's okay to leave a little bit of that line showing because we do wanna know where the petals are, but I don't want them overlapping each other in my painting. I don't want those crisscrossy lines. So now I can still see 1, 2, 3, 4 petals. And I have a line to show where my stem is. I'm not gonna draw the rainbow because those I will just paint when I'm ready. So to start on the clover, we need 2 colors of green, 2 shades of green. My palette comes with 2 shades, but I'm still going to mix up some different dark green. So the way to get a dark green is to take green out of your palette. I have one over here. I think I'm actually gonna wipe that off so I can use that space. I'm gonna get my sponge a little bit wet in my paint water. And I'm just gonna use this sponge to soak that green paint up. It washes off pretty fast. So you'll need 2 clean places to mix your greens. I'm gonna use this one for dark green, and I'll use this for light green. So dark green is, I'm gonna get like 3 scoops of this dark green paint from my palette, and I'll wipe my brush off with water 3 times. That's pretty good. Now I'm gonna make it a little darker by adding brown, just 1 touch of brown. And 1 touch of yellow. Okay, now I have this as my scratch paper, and I'm gonna test out this color. It's easier to see what the color looks like on paper than in this paint mixing spot. I like that color, so I think I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna keep it like that. It's a little bit dull, so I'm tempted to add some more yellow, but I think instead I'm gonna add some yellow right on the paper when it's time. So I have a dark green, now I'm gonna make a light green, and light green is just green and yellow. So that was a couple dabs of green, and now I really like to keep my yellow clean. So I'm being so careful to wash my brush before I get more yellow. Okay, this is really bright, but I'm gonna leave it because I think this bright green mixed with this deep kind of dull green could make a really cool color on the clover. Yeah. Okay, so remember how we drew a line to kind of divide each one of these petals in half? So now is when we decide which side of the line will be a darker shade and which side will be lighter. And I think I'm gonna choose to have this bottom petal here be dark. And then I'm gonna follow that pattern all the way around. So dark paint on my brush, and I'm just gonna paint it on that side. If you go outside of your pencil lines, it's actually kind of nice. It helps to cover the pencil line so that when you're all done, you don't really see the sketch. So don't worry if you go a little bit over it. So I painted it, and now I'm gonna dab a little more paint on top because it was looking a little thin. And then skip this side so it can be light. Go to the next one. And curve around and get your dark paint onto there. Adding a little more on top. Skip this light one, go to this one. And right here. Okay, now while that is still wet, we want to move on to the light color, the light and bright color. And I'm going to start by painting the middle and trying not to let this green touch the dark green. But once I get most of it painted, I'm going to go right close to the edge and hope that they blend a little bit. And I have to work kind of quickly so that the dark green isn't totally dry. Because in a real clover, when we look at it, we don't see a dark side and a light side. The dark side is in shadow and the light side is in the sun or in the light. And so to make it look natural, we kind of divide it in half, but then we go back and let it blend. Okay, now with a little bit of yellow and a clean brush, I'm gonna drop some yellow at the bottom of each of these petals, right down towards the middle. And since there's still so much paint, it's starting to blend up towards the top. And then I'm gonna take the dark and touch up at the top of the light side. Just around the curve. Oh, and this one needs it up the side. So kind of light in the middle and kind of dark at the tops. And now I'm gonna let it dry. Oh, that's not true. I'm gonna do the stem. The stem is gonna be really narrow, and I'm gonna start at the top with just the tip of my brush and drag it down, just barely touching. There. Now I'm gonna stop and work on the rainbow, which I think is gonna be fun. I'm gonna, I guess, start with some red kind of up here. And some water. And I'm pushing down on my brush as I go so that it makes it kind of wide. I'm also not really moving my hand around. It's stuck to the table. I'm just pushing and twisting my wrist like that. Okay, wash that off. Get some orange. I'm gonna use this light orange. If you don't have a light orange, you could lighten your orange if you want, or use the orange that you have. And now I'm gonna touch it right close to the red and fill in that spot where red was kind of narrow, and then paint straight up the side of the red, letting them touch, because my favorite thing about watercolors is when the colors blend with each other. And in real life, the rainbow is very blended. It's almost impossible to tell one color from the next. Okay, now some yellow. And this is why I really wanted to keep my yellow clean, because if my yellow was all muddled with other colors, it wouldn't really show as yellow here for this rainbow. Okay, so I'm gonna follow the curve of this shamrock, this 4-leaf clover, to try and kind of fill in right there. And then, here we go, it's gonna blend. I'm gonna paint it right next to that orange. And now here we go with green. I'm gonna use that bright green that we made with just a little bit of this green from the palette. If you need more bright green, remember it was just dark green and yellow mixed together. I think it's nice to use one of the colors that's in the shamrock. It will kind of tie it all together. Okay, so I'm gonna fill in next to the yellow, like that. Figure out how wide it's gonna be, and then drag the brush up right next to that yellow. I think I want just a little more green in there, so I'll touch it in. Now, I can tell my paints are starting to dry, so I need to stop fiddling around and chatting between layers and get going so that they blend really well. So it's time for blue. Let's see what color blue that is. Yeah, that's pretty good. If you have other colors in your palette, like a pink or a different purple or a magenta, you can use whatever colors you want in this rainbow. Oh wait, the blue's not wide enough. Ah! Make your rainbow whatever colors you want. Look up here, it didn't follow the curve, it kind of tapered off, and so then it was gonna be a little bit weird shape when I added the purple. Okay. Purple. I like this one. Can you see this? I like this dark purple. I also have this kind of brighter purple, but I'm gonna do the dark one. Okay, rainbow's drying. I'm looking at the clover. And I'm gonna add just a little more of that dark green that I have over here. I'm gonna paint it kind of along the edges of the dark green. Just add it in almost like a line. And because it's still wet and watery, it'll blend. When you paint right here, if it's totally dry and you're seeing a really defined line, then just add more water and it should spread around. And then I'm gonna do just a little bit of that really light green down the side of the stem. Almost on top of the stem, but just off to the side just a little bit. I'm using my dry brush now to take a little bit of this darker paint off in a few places. Kind of will make it look like the sun's shining. There's some bright spots in there. But not too much. I don't want too much to come off. Okay. That's where I'm stopping. This could look really pretty if you continued the red down here. So it kind of looked like it was all the way behind the clover. Or if you painted the whole background with a rainbow, you could add more clover, you could add a pot of gold. There's lots of other things to add, but for right now, for me, this is where I'm gonna stop.